info and chill.
All right, imagine this. Okay. You walk into your garden, and all the plants, they just like perk up as if they're trying to hear you better.
Uh-huh.
Sounds pretty sci-fi, right? Like something out of a movie.
Right, yeah.
But what if I told you that plants actually react to sound? I mean, not like us, but in ways that scientists are only just starting to understand. There's a growing body of evidence suggesting that plants are much more attuned to sound than we once thought.
Okay, so let's break this down. We all know plants don't have ears, at least not in the way we think of them. So how are they picking up on these sounds? What's the deal?
Right, they don't have those outer ears like us,
Mm-hmm.
but they are incredibly sensitive to vibrations, way more than you might think.
Vibrations, got it.
Yeah, they've got these specialized cells called mechanoreceptors, kind of like tiny little sensors all over their leaves and stems.
But like a super-powered sense of touch.
Exactly. These mechanoreceptors allow them to feel even the slightest changes in their environment, picking up on all sorts of vibrations.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. But sensing vibrations is one thing. Can they actually differentiate between, say, the sound of a gentle breeze and my neighbor's lawnmower? Do they have plant preferences?
Now, that's where it gets really interesting. Some studies showed that plants can respond differently to specific types of sounds. One really cool example is this study from Tel Aviv University back in 2019.
Ooh, tell me more.
They found that evening primroses, these beautiful yellow flowers, actually increased the sugar content in their nectar by like 20% after being exposed to the sound of buzzing bees.
Wait, seriously, so they're basically recognizing the sound of their pollinators and sweetening the deal to attract them?
It seems that way. It's like they're putting out a dinner bell for the bees,
Yeah.
advertising their delicious nectar.
That's incredibly clever.
Yeah.
Plants are way more strategic than we give them credit for. If they're that tuned into bee sounds, I wonder if they're picking up on other sounds in their environment too.
That's a great question, and one that researchers are still trying to figure out. There's a lot more research to be done.
I read about a study where plant roots seem to dance towards a particular sound.
Oh yeah, that was a really cool study out of Cornell University in 2022. They had these maize roots growing in water tanks, and they played this low-frequency tone, like a deep bass sound, at about 200 hertz.
200 hertz is pretty specific. And what happened?
Well, the crazy thing is the roots actually started growing towards the sound. It was like they were drawn to it.
No way. So like plants have their own little dance parties going on underground.
Kind of.
Yeah.
But there's probably a more practical reason behind it. Scientists believe that plants might use sound to locate resources in the soil, like water and nutrients.
Oh, that makes sense. Like their roots are acting as little underground antennas searching for those essential elements. So we've talked about vibrations and how plants respond to specific sounds. But do these sounds actually affect their growth? Like, could listening to Beethoven make my peace lily grow faster? I'm really curious about that.
Well, you might want to put on some tunes for your plants because several studies have shown that specific sound frequencies can actually boost plant growth and even improve their nutritional content.
Really? Spell the details.
All right, so there was a study in 2020 where researchers exposed tomato plants to a 1.6 kilohertz sound at 90 decibels for a few weeks.
Okay, so like a pretty loud, high-pitched hum. What was the outcome?
The results were incredible. The tomatoes that were exposed to the sound had 20% more lycopene. That's the antioxidant that gives tomatoes their red color.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
Oh, and they also had 14% more vitamin C. The sound basically supercharged their nutritional content.
That's wild. So not only are they growing bigger, but they're also becoming more nutritious. That's amazing. I'm now imagining farmers blasting Mozart symphonies over their fields. But how does sound actually trigger these changes at a cellular level?
That's a great question, and one that scientists are still trying to fully understand. One theory is that sound waves stimulate certain enzymes within plants, like this one called the H+ ATPase pump, which is really important for nutrient transport.
H+ ATPase pump. Sounds complicated.
Basically, think of these pumps like tiny little conveyor belts moving nutrients within the plant. The sound waves might be giving these pumps a little boost, leading to better nutrient flow and ultimately healthier plants.
So it's like giving them a sonic energy drink. But does this apply to all plants? Or do different plants have different musical tastes, so to speak?
While research is ongoing, most studies show that plants seem to be particularly responsive to lower frequencies, typically in the range of 50 to 500 hertz.
Which makes sense, right? Those lower frequencies are similar to the natural sounds they encounter in their environment. Wind rustling through leaves, the hum of insects, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's like they're tuned into the frequencies that are most relevant to their survival and well-being in the natural world.
So maybe I should ditch my Spotify playlist and switch to nature sounds for my houseplants. I'm kidding, of course. But it's pretty amazing to think that something as simple as sound could have such a profound impact on their growth. Especially this idea that they might be able to sense their caretakers. Is there any truth to that? Can they actually recognize and respond to human voices?
No, that is the million-dollar question. And that's where things get even more intriguing and maybe a little bit mysterious.
All right, spill the beans. What have scientists discovered so far? I need to know.
Well, there's no definitive proof yet that plants can recognize individual human voices, but there are some really interesting hints that suggest it might be possible.
Okay, I'm all ears. What kind of hints are we talking about?
Well, in 2021, researchers in Korea did this study where they exposed mung bean sprouts to recordings of human chatter at a volume similar to a normal conversation.
So they were basically having a chat with the bean sprouts.
Pretty much. They used frequencies in the 1,000 to 1,500 hertz range, which is a bit higher than those natural sounds we were talking about earlier.
Interesting. And did the bean sprouts respond in any way?
They did. And get this, they sprouted about 10% faster than the bean sprouts that weren't exposed to the voices.
Wow, that's a pretty noticeable difference. So does that mean they were actually responding to the voices?
It's definitely possible. But it's important to remember that there could be other explanations too. Maybe it was the carbon dioxide from human breath that had an effect, or maybe there were subtle vibrations associated with the sound that the plants were picking up on. More research is needed to say for sure.
Makes sense. But even if we don't know for certain, the fact that they responded at all to human chatter is pretty mind-blowing. It makes you wonder if they're more aware of us than we realize. If they evolved to pick up on the vibrations of pollinators, why couldn't they also sense other vibrations in their environment?
Exactly. And that leads us to a really fascinating hypothesis put forward in 2024, suggesting that plants might be able to use their roots to detect vibrations in the soil, kind of like a seismic sensor.
Whoa, so they could potentially feel the footsteps of their caretakers approaching. That's both amazing and a little bit creepy. But going back to those mung beans for a sec, you mentioned that they responded to human chatter, which is in a higher frequency range than what they typically encounter in nature.
You're right. And that's one of the big mysteries in this whole area of research. Why would plants be sensitive to the frequencies of human speech if those sounds aren't usually found in their natural environment? It's a bit of a puzzle.
It is. Is there any theory that might explain that?
Well, one idea is that the size and shape of a plant's leaves might play a role in how it resonates with different sound frequencies. Some scientists believe that larger leaves might be better at picking up lower frequencies, while smaller leaves might be more attuned to higher frequencies.
So it's like each plant has its own unique acoustic sweet spot based on its physical structure. Maybe those mung bean sprouts just happen to be particularly receptive to the frequencies of human speech. It's so complex, it's clear that we still have a lot to learn.
We do, but that's what makes it so exciting. There's so much more to discover. Speaking of discoveries, have you heard about that study involving Buddhist chants and plant growth? That one always gets me thinking.
Oh, yes. I was hoping we could talk about that one. It sounds fascinating. Tell me everything.
Well, back in 2018, researchers in China conducted this really interesting experiment. They exposed a group of plants to recordings of Buddhist chants and compared their growth to another group of plants that were kept in silence.
So like a plant meditation retreat. Did the chanting plants achieve enlightenment?
Well, I can't speak to their spiritual state, but they did grow significantly larger than the plants in the control group.
Seriously. So chanting to your plants actually works. Should I be playing Gregorian chants for my succulents? What's the secret here?
It's not quite as simple as that. We can't say for sure what caused the growth spurt. It could have been the rhythm of the chanting, the specific frequencies involved, or even something less tangible, like the positive energy associated with the chants.
Interesting. I'm all for sending good vibes to my plants, but is there any scientific basis for that, or is it more of a feel-good thing?
It's hard to say for sure, but there's growing evidence that the emotional state of a caretaker can actually influence plant growth. For example, one study found that plants cared for by stressed-out people tended to grow more slowly compared to those cared for by folks who are feeling relaxed and happy.
Wait, so our emotions can literally rub off on our plants? That's kind of amazing and a little bit scary. I'm definitely going to try to be more mindful of my mood when I'm tending to my garden. It makes you wonder if there might be something to this whole good vibes thing after all.
It really does. It challenges us to think about the interconnectedness of all living things and how much we still have to learn about these subtle ways we influence and are influenced by the natural world.
I couldn't agree more. This whole conversation is blowing my mind. But before we get too lost in the philosophical weeds, let's bring it back down to earth for a second. What does all this mean for us as plant lovers? Should we all be talking to our plants now? What's the takeaway here?
It's a great question and honestly one that science is still grappling with.
Right, it's kind of a head scratcher. On the one hand, we see evidence that plants respond to specific frequencies, especially those lower frequencies found in nature.
Yeah, like the wind, rustling leaves, streams.
Exactly, those natural vibes. But then we have those mung beans sprouting faster when exposed to human voices, which are generally higher frequencies.
Yeah, that study really threw a wrench in things, didn't it?
It did. It makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, just rediscovering something ancient, something our ancestors instinctively knew about the power of sound in nature.
I think you're onto something. For centuries, people have been singing to their plants, playing music in their gardens, and incorporating sound into various agricultural practices.
Right, it's like we're tapping into this innate connection with the natural world, a connection that maybe got lost somewhere along the way.
It's like we're remembering that we're part of this intricate web of life, not separate from it. And sound could be one of the keys to unlocking a deeper understanding of that interconnectedness.
And even if we don't have all the scientific answers just yet, there's something undeniably beautiful and therapeutic about connecting with our plants through sound, whether it's talking to them, playing the music, or simply being present and listening to the sounds of nature around us.
Couldn't agree more. There's a certain magic in it, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And I think it speaks to our deep-seated desire to nurture and care for other living things.
Well said. And who knows, maybe those positive vibes we're sending out are having a tangible effect on our plants, even if we can't fully measure it scientifically.
I like to think so. It's like we're creating this harmonious feedback loop where our care and attention expressed through sound contributes to their well-being, which in turn brings us joy and a sense of connection.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Even if plants can't understand our words, they might still be picking up on the emotional tone, the intention behind our actions.
Right, like they're sensing our genuine care and responding in kind. This whole idea of sonic agriculture really excites me. If sound can influence plant growth, imagine the possibilities for sustainable farming practices.
It's an incredibly promising field. Researchers are already exploring how sound waves can be used to increase crop yields, reduce the need for pesticides and herbicides, and even enhance the nutritional value of food.
It's like we're on the cusp of a whole new era of agriculture, one that's more in tune with nature and its rhythms.
Exactly. And as we continue to explore the fascinating world of plant bioacoustics, who knows what other incredible discoveries await? Maybe one day we'll be able to create personalized soundtracks for our gardens, carefully tailored to each plant's specific needs and preferences.
Now that's a future I want to live in. A symphony of sounds nurturing a thriving ecosystem right in our backyards.
A beautiful vision indeed. This journey into the realm of plant bioacoustics has been truly enlightening, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's opened my eyes to the incredible complexity and sensitivity of the plant world. And I hope it's inspired our listeners to look at their own plant companions with a fresh perspective, to see them not just as decorative objects, but as vibrant, responsive beings that might be tuning into us more than we realize.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So to all our plant-loving listeners out there, we encourage you to embrace that sense of wonder and curiosity. Talk to your plants, sing to them, play the music, observe them closely, and see what you discover.
Info and chill.